Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, highly specific document that outlines a sweeping public health framework for regulating drugs and alcohol. Whether you're a policymaker, a public health official, or just someone who's really interested in alternative approaches to civic safety, think of this as a structured briefing. We're going to look strictly at the author's proposed shift right away from prohibition, moving toward a meticulously controlled system that's designed to prioritize community safety above absolutely everything else.
Now, you might be wondering, what if a dream could inspire public health policy? It's kind of a strange question, right? But what is genuinely captivating about today's source material is exactly how it translates a sudden grassroots realization, sparked literally by a dream, into a serious, structured policy proposal. The author uses this personal epiphany to construct a very pragmatic, real-world argument for government oversight.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We'll be covering a vision for safety, the dangers of unregulated substances, protocols for safe regulation, supply chain and oversight, outcompeting the black market, and finally, peace and public safety.
So kicking things off with Section 1, a vision for safety, moving from a grassroots realization straight to concrete policy.
The author's entire public health argument actually begins with a pretty wild anecdote. They describe having this vivid dream about smoking weed with their brother at a wedding, and in the dream, the unregulated use led to these inappropriate acts, and they actually ended up getting kicked out of their own celebration. The author notes that even upon waking up, that lingering feeling of chaos forced a really profound question. Why are these substances banned in the first place? And the realization they came to is that they're banned because, when left totally unchecked, they ruin lives.
And waking up from that realization leads directly to this central thesis: everything should be regulated just to be safe. The crucial point here is that the author is definitely not arguing for a free-for-all. Actually, scratch that, it's the exact opposite. They're arguing that because unregulated use causes so much chaos, the only logical public health response is to strictly regulate these substances to establish real community safety.
Let's transition into Section 2, the dangers of unregulated substances, looking at the reality of the status quo.
To really get the proposed solution, we first have to understand the problem exactly as the source defines it. The author identifies the unregulated market as an incredibly dangerous environment. Just think about the risk for a second. Consumers are out there facing manipulated ingredients and completely unknown dosages. Without knowing what's actually in a substance or how much to take, people inadvertently abuse it. And that lack of knowledge is exactly what ruins lives.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast, right? On one side, criminalization breeds the black market, manipulated ingredients, unknown doses, and ruined lives. On the flip side is regulation, known ingredients, safe portions, and established safety methods that consumers can actually follow. The argument is that shifting from criminalization to regulation isn't just a good idea, it's a mandatory public health obligation to protect individuals from dangerous, unregulated ingredients.
Which brings us to Section 3, Protocols for Safe Regulation. How do we establish the highest possible standard?
What's absolutely fascinating here is the sheer level of detail the author demands from a regulated market. They argue for the highest standard of oversight, translating into strict mandated labeling requirements. If a government is going to regulate a substance, the packaging must explicitly state the correct usage, the specific portion or dosage, the appropriate time to take it, the exact intensity or potency of that portion, along with hard health facts and proven safety methods. It is a highly clinical, fully standardized approach to substance distribution.
But get this, the author goes a step further. It isn't enough to just print the rules on a label. The text insists that the packaging must explain why these specific dosages and safety methods are required in the first place. Transparency is totally key here. By educating the consumer on the reasoning behind the health data, the regulatory framework empowers individuals to make safe choices rather than just blindly following, or, let's be real, ignoring arbitrary rules.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds into supply chain and oversight, ensuring accountability.
So the author proposes 4 distinct steps to keep the supply chain locked down. First, substances must be under strict supervision all the way up until distribution. Second, there has to be a clear reporting mechanism if a user experiences an issue. Third, that report must allow officials to immediately identify the source of the batch. And fourth, it must trigger an official investigation. It's a complete, closed-loop system designed to trace any public health issue back to its exact origin and fix it fast.
Next up is Section 5, outcompeting the black market through a natural shift in consumer choice.
This right here captures the economic and psychological core of the author's argument. How do you defeat the black market? Through consumer choice. The author theorizes that when you place a highly regulated, thoroughly tested product with clear safety statements next to an illegal, homemade drug with completely unknown intensity, well, consumer trust naturally gravitates towards safety. People will choose the regulated option because they can read the safety statement before they ever use it. The black market isn't defeated by police force. It's made obsolete by a safer, superior alternative.
To really underline this, the source makes a very direct assertion. There is no way to stop it but to regulate it. The author notes that current approaches, which include heavy criminalization and, in some places, literally killing people for dealing, simply fail to eliminate the market. Because the demand is always there, the author argues that pragmatic regulation is the only functional policy choice available to a government that actually wants to solve the problem rather than just punishing it.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Peace and Public Safety. Let's look at the societal benefits of regulation.
So, what is the ultimate payoff for officials who adopt this regulatory framework? According to the text, it's all about securing core community benefits. The author lists these as freedom, safety, peace of mind and body, and ultimately, global community stability. By bringing these substances out of the shadows and placing them under the strict umbrella of public health protocols, society as a whole just becomes more peaceful and infinitely safer.
Now, the text also grounds this policy proposal in a deeply philosophical and even slightly theological foundation. The author states, "Know that God made it to be there, but how will we use it is the problem, and its solution." This shifts the moral burden entirely. The substance itself isn't inherently evil, it naturally exists in the world. The true variable, the root of both the problem and the solution, is entirely based on human application and how society chooses to manage it.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought. The author's framework asks us to face reality. These substances are already here. By strictly controlling the ingredients, the dosages, and the supply chain, can we transform a source of societal chaos into a managed, peaceful reality? I'll leave you to ponder that. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on a highly structured approach to public health policy.